Some they call it functional alcoholism, but if you know anything about Ben, he's got vision with precision, microphones and a tinkle of derision. You're about to hear what beer can be. It's time for Barley and Me.
Welcome to Barley and Me. I'm your host, Ben Rice. We're here today in Fort Collins, Colorado, not anywhere near Sacramento. We're here today at Gilded Goat Brewing with brewer, owner, Charlie Hoxmeier.
Ben, happy to be here.
Thank you so much for letting me do this. I really appreciate your time, especially where we are right now as a world.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Any chance to talk about beer just endlessly, open-ended, I'll take it.
Let's do it. Yeah. Perfect. And our special guest today, Jeff Calloway, the Associate Director of the Fermentation Program at Colorado State University.
What's up, Ben? Thanks for having me. Charlie, thanks for the beer.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
I don't know what we're drinking.
Well, both of you actually have Lightfoot. It's our coffee pale ale.
Oh,
It's
okay.
my go-to beer, actually.
Okay, so this is a weird thing. Coffee and beer.
Yeah.
I believe I'm not really a hippie or anything like that, and I don't believe in coincidences. But the other day, I was in Sacramento, and a coffee shop messaged me like, "Hey, we'd like to do your podcast. We're doing some coffee beers." I'm like, "Yeah, I get it, but I kind of got a lot of stuff going on right now. I can't really fit you in. I'm doing a Maltsters May, for instance. I can't really find a spot for you." And then I went to a brewery to pick up their new coffee beer that they'd released. And another coffee roaster was there, recognized me from when we'd met at another beer event. And he's like, "Hey, we should really we'd talked about it before. He's like, we should do coffee things." I'm like, "I think the world wants me to do some coffee episodes." And it's like, I was just over at Horse and Dragon where we drank a coffee stout. And I had told the two coffee roasters, like, maybe we can get together when there's like a coffee beer festival. And they're like, "Are there those?" I'm like, "I'm pretty sure those exist." But it turns like the world needs to have a coffee beer festival at this point. If there's not one, there should be one.
I think so. I mean, we use it often enough in beer anyway, so yeah.
One of my favorite beers, when I'm in Sacramento, there's a brewery in Davis called Sudwerk, old school German brewery. They have a thing called Three Best Friends. It's chocolate coffee lager, and it's phenomenal. So I'm like, look, if you're going to tell me that you can do coffee and something besides a stout, I'm into it. So this is not how I usually start the podcast, but also now that I've got to speak it into the world, apparently it works.
Yeah, the coffee is happening with you. I don't think you can fight it anymore.
It's got to happen. I think I found a coffee beer festival. Is that what we do? Is that how it works? I just found it?
There is one now, it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like we're doing it.
Led by Ben.
Yeah. Barley and Me presents Coffee Fest. Cough Fest. That's not ideal in the post-COVID world. In a post-COVID world, we don't do Cough Fest. We've already had enough of that.
Too soon, Ben, too soon.
I'm sorry. It gets away from me. My brain just goes in places, and it's just look, this is not how I start my podcast, and I apologize, even though it's a very positive thing. I'm very excited. Oh, hold on. Okay. That's nice.
Acceptable?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's very, the coffee's kind of overwhelms the hop a little bit, which I'm totally on board for. It's exactly what I want. If you're going to give me a coffee non-stout, actually, with a coffee stout, you still want the coffee to overpower.
Yeah.
I want it to be the focus.
You have to taste the coffee. If I'm going to say it's a coffee pale ale, you better taste that coffee.
You better get that coffee right in there.
So I love that beer because we worked with another local company to make that roast specifically for that beer. So it's a custom roast that he does. To keep it, you'll have kind of that classic coffee flavor or aroma on the nose, but the roast of that coffee in particular is tea-like, bergamot, rose hips, jasmine, very floral. So it complements the hops that we use, and it's not like Folgers in a dark beer, So it's a very light coffee in there.
It's a lighter roast.
Yeah, a very light roast.
Very light roast. Yeah, I made the mistake of trying a Folgers during quarantine, and as a coffee person, that was not fun.
It's blasphemy.
I feel like it's good to do every now and again as a reset. To remember why you like a coffee.
We might not be able to get access coffee again. We should get some Folgers as a backup. And then we made it oh God, this coffee has come away. The best part of waking up is Folgers not being in your cup.
True. Coffee beer instead. In your cup.
Exactly. It's for breakfast. It's for lunch. It's for a late day pick-me-up. You've got some work to do. But also it's been a struggle. Anyway, I have a classic opening line. I haven't gotten to it. Charlie, how's business here at Gilded Goat?
That's such a loaded question, Ben.
I know, especially now. it turns out.
Yeah. There's actually light at the end of the tunnel now. The vaccine rate in Colorado has been, they've been pretty aggressive with vaccine clinics.
Awesome.
And most of our staff has already had their jabs, one, if not both jabs. Weather's nice. It's 78 degrees at the beginning of April in Colorado. I mean, it could snow next week potentially, but that's, we signed up for that, I guess.
Yeah.
But people are anxious to get back to a sense of normality, and you've probably heard that 1,000 times now. But we're all in this. So
only for the last year.
Yeah, right, exactly. Every week.
We thought we were done a year ago. We were very wrong.
I know. The 1 year anniversary, the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The extra week spring break that just kept going.
Yeah. So I mean, there's light at the end of the tunnel. It feels good. It feels good to have a full brewery again. To be running out of beers because I can't brew them fast enough. It feels good again. I like it.
Yeah.
Not nearly as stressed as I used to be.
Yeah, this is the perfect time to ask the questions. Like, there's the lights, like you said, it's finally a thing, but like, obviously, it had an effect on your business.
Certainly. Oh yeah.
And so, what were you set up for pre-COVID? What was your business plan? What were you doing to get yourself out there?
We've always been a taproom model. That was the goal going into it. It's hard to lose margin on massive distribution of beers going out. There's a kind of a marketing benefit from that that's a little bit hard to measure, but taproom model's always been our thing, a community gathering place, warm, welcoming environment, and so that's been our thing. But we had to quickly transit. We bought a canning line in April, right after shit hit the fan, and that saved our asses. And a huge community of very involved customers that love what we do. And this is a family-run place. I own and operate this with my parents. My 2 little brothers own the liquor store next door, so it's a big family business, for better or for worse. But we've built this huge community, and they got us through maybe what was the worst year in the history of our business. Hopefully, touch
shout
wood,
out to craft beer drinkers coming through for the craft brewers.
Right. Well, craft beer is such a piece of the fabric of Fort Collins. It's just what we do here. So, we saw a lot of support from the community, and it was overwhelming, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So I'm glad to be done with that. I'm glad to not have to fill hundreds of cans every day and not be able to talk to anybody when they're drinking my beer. But yeah, long story short, that was the goal initially. Taproom, transition to some packaging, and kind of double dip from here on out, I guess.
Yeah.
So what is your production plan moving forward with the packaging specifically?
Mostly in house. I like to sell my beer in house. With my brother's liquor store next door, we have a shoe-in right there. I can upcharge him as much as I want because he's my brother, but maybe a handful of liquor stores to spread the name around town a little bit, but still keep it in-house as much as possible.
Yeah, and you bought the canning line. You didn't rent it. You didn't use like a mobile canning line. And like that was the real crush. Was a lot of breweries have moved away from the canning thing. And then when this hit, everyone's like, oh, we got to get a way to get our beers.
It was a necessity.
Out to people. It was, if you couldn't do it, you were done.
Yep.
I don't know how Colorado got affected by it as far as the brewing industry, but I put out a survey of what people expected when we were like about a week and a half in, if it continues on. And people thought, we're going to lose 50% of our breweries if this goes on more than 3 months. And that did not happen. Any brewery that closed was already on the fritz like before COVID. Nobody like lost a business due to it. I don't know how it's been in Colorado though.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like you to chime in because you have a kind of a different, broader feel than I do. There were at 30, that's a estimate, at least 30 breweries closed in Colorado during this time. I know a handful of them were probably on that
track
road
already
pre-COVID. Yeah. And we may still, the Brewers Association released that 50% statistic right when everything happened. So PPP, EIDL, I think it was a Band-Aid now. It's going to take a while. It's not this V-shaped recovery that people were talking about. It's going to be a slow slog back up to what we were doing pre-COVID. So I think there's a chance that some people might still go under because of the environment that we're still in right now.
Well, people don't want to go out. They're still hesitant to be out there.
Right.
So you still got to deal with your canning and your kegging and everything like that.
Yep.
But if the kegs, if you're not coming out, the kegs don't serve a purpose for the people that aren't coming out.
That's true. And the bars and restaurants really were in the same boat as all the craft breweries, too. So, if you had a lot of off-site distribution, that ended.
That's the end of your business
quickly.
model. Yeah.
So, Yeah, it's had an impact certainly on all of the craft breweries in the state, and we'll probably not done seeing the consequences of it yet, is my guess.
Yeah. So on more positive spins, because this has been a terrible conversation for the last year. It used to be a very bright and happy
I'm so tired of talking about this. But,
let's start on a happy note is how it used to work. But I'm like, well, I'm not going to change what's... if it's broke, don't fix it is how I take it. But so, Jeff, you're over doing fermentation science.
Yep.
Colorado State. Are you guys... I've kind of been asking around about what exactly that program entails.
Sure.
Because where I'm in Sacramento, we have a brewer's program at UC Davis.
Right.
Where they kind of task out their brewing to Sudwork, which made that coffee lager tie-in. We did it. I'm so talented. But I heard you guys do not do that. You do not pair with a brewery for the program. But that could be incorrect.
Well, we have our own breweries.
Yeah, see? Look at that. Which makes you better, obviously.
Different, not less, is what I like to say.
there you go.
No, we're pretty unique. I mean, we're in Fort Collins, Colorado, right? So a lot of breweries, I mean, in town, in state, some of the smallest in the world to the largest in the world, and some pretty sizable and significant mid-sized breweries, right, that distribute nationwide. So we have a lot of breweries available to us and the students, and very involved community. But we also built one in our student center, a 10 hectoliter production brewery. And we also have a couple of brew houses that are smaller, 50-liter, half a hectoliter systems that are for R&D and for the students to get a learn on. So 3 breweries on campus, like 3 brew houses on campus, no reason to...
Now, for our American listeners, what is a hectoliter?
Yes. So we are scientists, so we like the metric system. There's units of
everybody
10.
should.
I know that it's so
Base
awful.
10 is... How do we not adopt this? Okay, moving on.
Yes, no, exactly. But so a 10 hectoliter system is basically 8.5 barrels. So
Okay.
to give you an idea.
I love that I had to ask that question. It's a very fun thing for me.
Well, and the students in the program work in hectoliters and liters and Celsius.
And then they move over to here. You're like,
and then they get a job at a small American craft brewery who works sometimes in specific gravity and gallons and pinches and dashes.
Yeah. Is that... So I'm going to assume, Charlie, that you somehow came from the CSU program. Is that a safe assumption?
So I actually graduated from CSU before the brewing program actually got up and rolling.
look at that.
I did my PhD at CSU in microbiology and got out of there at the same time they got that stuff rolling. And then I've always been a Ram. I grew up in this town, and I started my brewery just as the program got rolling or shortly thereafter, and got my foot in that door and didn't let them push me back out of it. So I've been slowly wiggling my way back into that program ever since.
Yeah. So microbiology, that doesn't have anything to do with beer, right?
It's funny you say that because it's the one required ingredient in this whole thing. We can make beer without barley, without hops, without fruit, or marshmallow fluff, or whatever you're adding to it. But the only thing that we actually have to use is a microbe, the only required ingredient.
Huh.
So that means the fermentation science program needs to make fermentation microbiology required.
It is.
But not the lab.
Not the lab.
Not the lab.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
That was a big reveal. That was going to be game-changing.
The lecture. Yeah, the lecture, of course.
Yeah, it's the least sexy part of beer. Like, you talked... Like,
Hey,
for my
says who?
podcast- well, I'm people.
Oh,
People...
I'm a microbiologist as well, so I'm also wondering.
I'm just going to tell you guys that you're not sexy. I don't know if that's okay to say.
respectfully
But
disagree.
like, here's where it comes. Everybody's like, brewer, sexy. That's a sexy position.
It's
And
not.
then-
It's not
and
glamorous.
then hop grower, killing it. Maltster, that's for the real nerds. And then nobody's like, yeast, there's no fan base. There's nobody cares. But it's the most important,
Maybe
like, irreplaceable
you're
part.
talking to the wrong people, maybe.
What?
Microbiology is sexy.
Yeah.
We've always thought so.
Yeah. I mean, well, you spent your whole career in it. It seems like maybe you
Where else do you get to commit mass genocide with a smile on your face and nobody's chasing you
That's
down?
true.
Yeah, it's like, no, I'm going to regrow it. It's fine. They'll be back. We're going to come back up. It's just like Rome.
Yeah.
It's-
So there are actually some theories that it's actually the yeast that control us and they compel us to make beer. Because, I mean, we're growing them by the trillions, right, in these tanks. And so it's really, and we're growing them, we're populating them. We think the beer is for us, but really we're just growing the microbes.
Yeah. You're the host.
The cliched brewers joke of brewers make wort and yeast make beer.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Right.
we're just making a home for the yeast, and then they finish the job for us.
Yeah. Exactly.
Happy ending.
And it's not the worst parasite that's ever existed.
I guess.
Symbiotic.
Yeah. It's like beer was a mistake. That's the best part about beer. It's like kind of a mistake.
Happy accident.
Yes. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
I mean, some ambitious farmer who left a vat of grain out, and it got sour, and then he was bold enough to taste it, and then got his friends to taste it, and then he did it again, and maybe here we are.
He's like, how much trial and error do you think went into making a beer and being like, this is a thing we can just keep doing?
Well, I don't know. The spontaneous Belgian sour is probably not much.
But he's like, well, what did I do? Was it the letting it out in the rain? Was it keeping it in this place? Like, if I move it, does that change it? But they're probably like, I'm just going to do the exact same thing again and see if it happens again, right? That's probably how they started. Just like, there was a leak in the ceiling, and we're good.
Yep.
And it was a warm day.
The scientific method was born.
Yeah, we did it. So in my trip to Colorado, which is a whopping 24 hours in, this is the second time a method's been brought up. So the scientific method, how does that work, and how does that apply to beer?
Observe, test, repeat. I guess maybe in a nutshell. I mean, you have to observe an action, decide if what caused that action, and then test to see if you can duplicate that same action. I'm boiling it down.
Yeah, this is the high school physics class.
Yeah,
not
maybe,
physics.
maybe
that's
not
wrong.
even that advanced, but
Yeah,
I guess in my brewery, it's find a flavor that we want to try and use different ingredients to try and mimic that flavor or get close to the picture that we have of the beer at the end of the day on the bar. Test out different ingredients and flavors and processes until we get close to it. Refine over a very iterative process of refining this experimentation, and then go for it.
Yeah.
Make a big batch and see how it does.
Refine, repeat, release.
Yeah,
Done.
Basically.
And there's a very long list of equipment and just technology that comes out of brewing. Refrigeration is one.
That's true.
Started on train cars, keeping beer cold long distances. I don't know if it was thermometers or specific gravity measurement, but there's a lot of technology that is invented by brewers.
Yeah. Like what?
Refrigeration.
Refrigeration in particular.
Was it for beer?
Yeah.
It was.
Oh, well, yeah. Fuck these meats and veggies. Let's get this
right.
beer in here.
Get the beer
They had enough
cross-country.
salt for meat and veggies.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
We had to keep beer
Very good.
cold.
And then beer's like, what if we put a bunch of salt in the beer though?
Goza.
Yeah,
I love it. Do you guys make?
Not currently, but we make a goza in the summer. Yeah.
Okay, so seasonal. You know what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes.
We hope.
I pretend.
Yeah. You got some hibiscus in there. I don't know.
Yeah,
what you're
we've done
doing.
that too.
Yeah. I don't know.
You got to try it all.
Yeah. So Colorado is, I think, if you think about beer towns, beer cities, beer states, people are going to go to California, Oregon.
That's a big trip.
That's a big trip. Yeah.
Are you traveling all over Colorado for this beer trip?
On this beer trip, I'm keeping it very, very Denver, Fort Collins, nowhere else.
Okay.
Somebody tried to talk me into Lions. I fell for it. They were like, actually, Lions isn't available. Let's go to Longmont. Also, they're not available. We'll just drink beer. That's fine. Things happen. I understand. As a beer podcaster, I'm very, very chill with the fact that brewers are busy, have lives outside of beer, and, the equipment's not perfect. So I've had a few beer podcasters like, how do you deal with the fact that people cancel on you? I'm like, there's another brewery. That's the answer to that. Mm-hmm. There's always somebody. Like, most of my best gets are last-second fill-ins because people have lives. And if you don't understand that, get out of the podcast game. That's, what was it? Okay, so I was working with this brewery Fieldwork in Berkeley, California, but they were in the middle of, doing that old, the San Diego model where we have, 8 or 10 tap rooms, right? So they were expanding from 2 to 10.
Whoa.
And they're like, hey, sorry, something came up. I can't make the episode this weekend. But they told me on Thursday. That's 2 whole days. And so I knew there's a brewery that just opened up 2 blocks from my apartment. I'm like, I'll go talk to them, right? Easy. Talk to them we're not interested. I'm like, you're a fool. I'm here on a Friday night and you're empty. And you're not interested in doing a podcast. So I'm like, well, you got to shoot your shot. So I emailed one of the bigger brewers in the region. Like, yeah, come on by tomorrow. We'll do it. Nailed. Got Drake's Brewing. which is one of the classic breweries in California, Northern California. Got them. I had another one at a small brewery in Davis, California, where the brewing school is.
Mm-hmm.
Had a guest. He's like, I can't make it. I'm like, you know who lives in Davis at the brewing program? Dr. Charlie Bamforth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm friends with him on Facebook. I'll message him. He's like, yeah, I actually taught that guy how to brew. I'll come by.
That's funny.
Done.
Wow.
I had one. The brewery was like, we're doing an expansion. We've got a new brewery. And I was like, I'm not really a big fan of the beer. And they're like, hey, we're really busy with this expansion. We can't do it. But I already had, it was the day of. I had my equipment in my car, just go there right from work. I'm like, I'm ready to go. Like, we're not going to do it. And I check my email. There's an email. Hey, Weinsteffen is in town and is trying to promote this beer they're doing with Sierra Nevada. Can you come by and talk to Weinsteffen's head brewer? I'm like, oh, let me see if I can work that one out.
Is that a fairly new German brewery?
Yeah, it's fairly new,
Okay.
under the radar
Yeah.
thing. I'm like, yeah.
I bet they'll be big.
Yeah, they'll be fine. I mean, they're doing some old school stuff, so who knows what's going to happen with that.
I sidetracked you, which you warned me about,
You're right.
right when you were talking about Colorado craft beer.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about Colorado craft beer?
I would love to, because I always love to see what every region kind of does. Because, you know, in Portland, there's the brew pub model. In San Diego, it's the 9 million satellite taps. In Sacramento, it's very much just the tap room. We don't have any big aspirations unless they happen upon us. So everything's different. And this is my first trip out here for beer. So I need to know what the hell you guys are doing.
It took you a long time to get out here.
Look, man, I was here for a whole evening once. So it's just been like my plan was to be at GABF 2020, but then 2020 happened. So, you know,
If you come out for GABF, it's hard to get up to Fort Collins, I feel like.
It
That's,
is.
It's a bit of a trek.
GABF.
you don't know who I am.
Overwhelming.
If you think I'm not coming here 3 or 4 days in advance to get shit done beforehand,
There you go,
Okay.
planning.
you don't know
planning.
who I am. Which, to be fair, you don't know who I am.
That's good effort, though. You have to,
Yeah,
almost.
always hustle.
GABF is a shit show.
Yeah,
And then no one's in town.
Yeah, right.
right.
Everyone's left Fort Collins.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to punt the craft beer in Colorado question to Jeff because he's been doing this longer than I have, and he's seen some changes in this industry over the years.
I mean, I guess I don't even know where to begin. I mean, Colorado craft beer is definitely its own thing, right? I mean,
Right.
we're up here in the mountains, so we're getting first pass on beautiful water. So everybody
yeah.
else is getting our used water, which is cool. So, yeah, I mean, we have everything, right? So when you have Coors, down in Golden, that's been here obviously a very long time, and at one point the largest brew house in the world. I don't think it is anymore, but and then you have Anheuser-Busch up here in Fort Collins. So you have a couple big boys in town,
Yeah.
in the state.
And then you got this small guy that's been around for about 25 years, and is
What is it, Fat Tire Brewery or what?
yes,
what's that
Fat
one
Tire.
called?
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's all the out-of-staters. Where's the Fat Tire Brewery? No, so obviously New Belgium, right, which is, I will say, a tremendous supporter of Colorado State University as well as the FST program.
And small breweries across the state.
Huh? Yeah.
And you actually have a lot of people don't realize even the biggest breweries have helped out the smallest breweries with kegs and just the camaraderie and whether it is something in the water. I think the Smithsonian did a story on beer in Fort Collins specifically because it's just we expect it everywhere in the country. Like, isn't everybody just like partners and friends and have, Google groups where we're sharing ingredients and transferring all this stuff? And it's like, oh no, apparently not. But there's fantastic raw materials, right? A lot of malt grown in Colorado, barley grown in Colorado, and then malted here. Hops, we're getting there. But that's fine. We'll bring those in. But just fantastic people, breweries of all sizes, lots of different models, a lot of entrepreneurship. We're fortunate in Colorado to have self-distribution. So the distribution laws in Colorado, I mean, that's
That 3-tier system was a deadly call, and it doesn't exist anymore at this point, right? Pretty much, it's in there in spirit, but not in reality.
Yeah, probably.
It's loose.
It depends on the state. I mean,
That's
some
true.
states it's
That
real
is also
tight,
very
and,
true. Good point.
The beer. I mean, and you still. I mean, no matter how thin it is, you still have to have that paper. Like it's a different company ish. But, like when New Belgium was starting and Odell and some of those companies, I mean, loading up kegs in their, just personal vehicles and delivering to restaurants, like you can't do that everywhere.
Yeah.
And when I have traveled for like the Craft Brewers Conference and visited other states, right, you have the local lawmakers that are actively working on, like, for example, making tap rooms go through a distributor to sell their own beer, right? Like, I mean, just totally backward stuff. Really just, it's so corrupt, it's obvious, right? But Colorado is a lot more, I think, genuine when it comes to that and supportive. We for the fermentation program at CSU, we had to work with the state to change laws a little bit so that we could have a couple of breweries on campus, because in Colorado you're actually only allowed to have one license, so you couldn't open multiple locations.
Okay.
You get one license. But with us having multiple breweries, but the one was not going to sell beer; it was educational. So anyway, we had to tweak the the law a little bit, and I went down and had to testify, committee, and was a little bit nervous about how that might go. And when the first question was, "Did you bring us any beer?" I knew things were going to be okay. So yeah, we have just a supportive state, tremendous people, and just a lot of support. So
yeah. So you got to sell beer to sell beer. Be like, here's the beer I brought. Look how good it is. Let me sell it in more places.
Yeah,
Let me do more.
You can grease the wheels in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
The hard part now, I guess 10, 15 years ago, it was pretty easy just to kind of start up on a whim, and kind of figure it out as you went. Now the game is so high. I mean, this is probably everywhere, but there used to be a lot of talk about educating the consumer. Like, there's not a lot of educating the consumer in Fort Collins or in Colorado for the most part.
You're in Fort Collins. You know why you're there.
Yep.
And they know what they expect. And so if you think you're going to open up with some subpar draft situation, like it's not going to happen. I mean, people will be like, are those brass you got in your your taps? Like, what's going on? Like, this tastes funky. So it's a very educated consumer. So the bar is high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did that come into opening up Gilded Goat? Did you feel confident?
No, and maybe I still don't. My imposter complex that I might carry with me forever, probably. But there's always so much more to learn, and I always want to do a better job at it. But all through grad school and postdoc, I was homebrewing. It was like my reprieve from grad school, and I realized after a decade of scientific training, I realized like how much of my science I can apply to brewing. And I'm kind of pedantic also, so I like those minuscule details and following along with these steps and protocols and procedures. So it became very scientific for me, and at the end of my postdoc, it was either get back into academia, pursue another federal position, or kind of jump on what were the coattails of maybe a rapidly growing craft brewing industry at that point, even 5 years ago. Kind of a hard time to open up a new brewery 5 years ago, and even maybe more so now. So I had the science of brewing, a good understanding of the theory and the science of brewing. My dad is the dean of the College of Business at CSU, so he had the business operations side of things, and it felt like a double-edged sword for us. We had the brewing and we had the business.
And if you failed, you had no excuse.
Well, yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure whatsoever.
That's true. I mean, outside of COVID pressure. And
well, you can't see that coming.
Right, yeah, nobody saw that coming.
That wasn't in your business plan? Jeez, Charlie.
You don't have a
global pandemic.
Worst case scenario? Global pandemic worst case scenario?
We did, but it wasn't that worst case scenario.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, nobody wants beer anymore. Everybody goes sober.
A recession-proof industry.
A new prohibition.
That would be, different problem.
Yeah.
But so we thought we had the right cards in our hands to jump into this, and the first 3 rules of real estate still apply to breweries too: location, and depending on what kind of model of brewery that you're running, distribution or tap room or whatever, that changes a little bit. But we always wanted to have a tap room community. Once we found this spot, we knew we had to dive into it. So we get a lot of natural traffic over here. I've spent a decade in college and I didn't take a single finance or management class, which I'm kicking myself for now a little bit, because managing people is hard and it wasn't ever my forte after looking down a microscope for 10 years. But I'm learning quickly as we go. But it just felt like we had the right stuff to get into it.
Yeah, I think that anybody that has a science background that understands the microbes you're working with, you've got a leg up on so much of the competition. A lot of people, they might have mechanical engineering, so they can make sure their system's working properly. They can fix flaws that are in the process. I've been doing this podcast for 5.5 years, and those two careers and brewing it's like 80% of people. You have to do it.
Well, and there's
and
a lot
then 15% is water people that have been working in the water industry. Like, this is how water works, and water's very important to beer. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I mean, the science, a lot of people think it's unapproachable or unattainable or something, but it's really, it takes a lot of practice, of course, and learning, but it's not unreachable. And a lot of small brewers can really improve their quality and shelf life and consistency by just incorporating a little bit of approachable science into their practice.
Yeah.
Well, and so one of our tactics, right? So we're a fermentation program. It's not just a brewing program.
Right.
I mean, so fermentation
all
is more
things
than
fermented.
beer. Food and beverage, anyway. We don't get into the biofuels and whatnot, but food and beverage stuff. But brewing is the model because it's pretty easy to learn about science and engineering and these things when you think you're learning about beer. Like, it's just a totally different stoke and level of attention that you get when it's just basic thermodynamics, or well, no, this is actually heat from your steam or your fire going into your kettle, and it's oh, okay, this is suddenly 10 times more interesting, but it's the same thing. Yeah. So yeah, it's totally approachable, and people will do it for fun, right? I mean, how many home brewers are there always growing and learning those principles because it's fun?
Yeah. And this ties in. So the fun part about doing this tour that I'm doing, if I'm going to call it a tour, is that everybody wants to know what I'm doing next. And then when I tell them, they're like, oh, you should ask this person about this thing. So you brought
ominous.
it up with how you're recycling things. They said, hey, you should ask Charlie about sustainability.
Oh, that was Carol for sure, wasn't it? From Horse and Drive.
I'm not here to tell
Yeah,
tales out of school.
There's evidence. There will be evidence.
That's straight out of her mouth for sure, which is great. She started.
There's no recordings that we can go back to and reference.
Right, yeah. She started this campaign, small breweries, kind of at least looking at their water use and trash output, and she kind of led the charge initially for small breweries to think about that and find ways to measure it, and we've taken it another level up and just published a paper in the Master Brewers Association Technical Quarterly about things that small breweries can do. It was a case study for us. Our tapper manager got her master's degree from Western in environmental science, and this was her senior project. Her master's project was to do a case study in small brewery sustainability. So I think it's critical, considering the health of the watersheds across the country and the drought that's sweeping across the country and probably getting worse over the next decade or so. So it really behooves small breweries to pay attention to it in some aspect. Even a little bit can make a difference. But small breweries tend to be the least sustainable, which is not surprising when you think about it. Large breweries, the automation, the 24 hours of brewing, they're always in operation, so it's just easier for
economies
them.
Of scale always.
Right. Economy of scale is very important. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, and it makes a huge impact, so it's easier for them to be more sustainable. Small breweries are very unsustainable. They use a lot of water in the process.
Yeah.
Some breweries are not set up with the equipment to harvest that hot water or to harvest temperatures, but there are a lot of very easy things. Simply spraying your spray hose into a bucket and starting a timer to count how long it takes for you to fill a 5-gallon bucket, then you can just start to get an idea of every time you spray, how long am I spraying for, how much water am I just pushing down the drain. And cleaning your mash tun out with a rake instead of the spray hose, harvesting your cooling water after running your beer through a heat exchanger, It saved us thousands and thousands of gallons a year just by paying attention, being mindful of how much water we're using, when we're using it, if we need to be using it, reusing chemicals. I mean, there's just, you can start small by just thinking about what your use is and how you can reduce it, and then slowly ramp up and find better ways to use it, more efficient ways to use it, and altruistic goals, of course. It can help the bottom line of the business by reducing your utility costs, but We all have to drink this water,
Right.
and we all have to survive on this watershed for a long time.
I of course agree with sustainability and all of that, and I do like to ask annoying questions and push back
Please
sometimes.
do.
So two things that I'm wondering about, right? One, the small breweries, I think one thing that's awesome is generally, as long as you're not distributing out of state, I mean, at least it's being filtered through the human, filter and then put back into the local watershed. But also, and I've had these things when I'm like, painting at home and then I'm rinsing, because I'm like, oh, I want to save, the roller or whatever versus buying another one because how much water was used to make that, whatever. Sit there having these conversations. Yes, I'm using water. So if you're cleaning out your thing, but I mean, it is staying in the local watershed. You're using it, but it is staying locally. It's not disappearing. It's not until you start shipping it out of state or whatever. So I don't know the sustainability models, how deep they go and what they look at. I know it's far more than I can understand, but you're using water here. Even if it evaporates, it's still in the local water. So have you thought about that, or is that from a water perspective only? Like it's until you start shipping it out and away, like it's at least local still, right?
Yeah.
Totally, and that's an important distinction that a lot of people, when the city, any city or municipality releases some brochure out to its customers that say, don't water your lawn at this time or take shorter showers or something. It's consumptive versus non-consumptive water use.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Jeff is saying is almost all the water that we're using in the brewery, including the water that is then going into the urinal at the end of the day, gets returned to the treatment stream. So it's non-consumptive use. And it's a little bit, we should probably it helps our bottom line if we use less water overall.
Right.
Economic sustainability.
Economic sustainability, sure.
Yeah, and it's like, what can this water be used for instead of beer?
Sure.
And that's what's important, because once it goes through everything, it limits what that water can be used for. I think is where the sustainability model comes into it, is that water could have been better served somewhere else.
Yeah, potentially.
Like my lawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important.
You're not
Green
supposed to
lawns.
say that. But, non-consumptive versus consumptive use is an important distinction that people have to be aware of. And so the average water use per barrel in kind of the average, it's hard to average a craft brewery in the U.S., but it's like 7 barrels of water per 1 barrel of beer is kind of the average. But if we incorporate barley farming into that water use ratio, which is consumptive use. It doesn't get returned back to the water treatment stream. It goes up to 50 to 60 barrels of water per barrel of beer produced. So that's consumptive. That's the impact of consumptive use versus non-consumptive use. We should probably do everything that we can to turn the lights off all the time and make sure our refrigeration is running efficiently and use as little as water as possible. But we're not really saving that much water because it gets returned back to the treatment stream. So it's a good point, Jeff.
So let's make sure we eat all of our fruits and vegetables from California.
Because they waste so much water to get there. Yeah.
Well, and it's in there. Like you're literally, I mean, when you think of how much actual solid mass is in like whatever, spinach or whatever, any fruit, it's very little. It's mostly water. So you're like, you're shipping water out.
Yeah. And there's a whole controversy over how much water goes into an almond. That's nuts. So if you're like, I'm an almond milk drinker, hey, you're destroying the world. Just drink the cow milk at this point.
That's another topic.
That's another thing. There's so many other things. That's the problem.
Always.
Once you start pulling the thread, and look, greenhouse gases. Anyway, there's a whole.
Well, CO2 is
Right.
another, heavy CO2 use in breweries for sure.
Yeah.
And there, I forget the name of the brewery in Boulder that ended up pumping their fermentation produced CO2 up to the roof and started to farm spirulina or algae or something on the roof with the CO2. I mean, probably cool in theory and in a paper or in the news, but not practical or something.
Yeah, because who's buying that after you?
But it
produced
is a technology problem because CO2 recapture. So actually, for like Anheuser-Busch up here, one of the most efficient breweries around.
Right.
And in fact, they are a CO2 generator, but like selling it. They recapture it, clean it, and sell it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So interesting, right? So rather than getting CO2 from whatever mining or oil production, it's more biological. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
You start pulling these threads, and it's like you just get more confused on
So
what's the right thing to do.
There's good and there's bad, and there's like kind of in the middle, and it's I think anybody who starts a brewery kind of in their wildest dreams, become Sierra Nevada, right?
Yeah.
That family-owned situation's pretty legit. Like
It is. Yeah.
that's pretty nice.
I mean, it's amazing. Their environmental stewardship, their sustainability, the quality of their beers that they've been making for a long time. Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting. But like they give back, they create so much energy that they're able to sell their energy back to the city to help support that. And it's like
But how many of those can you have?
Right. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, nobody's like, to me, I'm like, in the current beer environment, I don't think there's a Sierra Nevada coming up anywhere at this point, the way that beer is going.
I think that ship has sailed. New Belgium is a close second.
Yeah.
And the efforts that they've made towards it.
I've been having a lot of conversations somehow about Bitcoin lately. And, you know, I don't understand it at all. I got to do math, and then I get money. Is what you mine it, and then they're like, figure out this math problem, and then you can have money, and then you can trade it to people who also understand math and have the money, but it's worth what it says it's worth.
You can also just buy it.
Yeah.
You can also, it's a whole thing. It's a mess, but it's like, you know, there's a limit to how much money is available in Bitcoin. So if you didn't get in early, you're at a disadvantage. It's the same thing in brewing. Like, if you didn't get in early on this stuff, there's probably a limit to how far you can grow.
If that's your goal. I really like...
I don't think... at this point, I think every brewer's realized, and every owner's realized that there's the
People
odds
still
of that.
try. If you haven't done the math, and if you haven't sat down and figured out that, like, if you want to be a production brewery, like, if you want to distribute canned beer, bottled beer, whatever, the leap to that is, I mean, it's basically exponential. From making beer and being a taproom model to then doing production, like, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
But what's awesome about the industry is that you can have all of these kind of decentralized smaller, like, so Charlie here wanting to be tap room and just small distribution footprint. Equinox here in town. They will only deliver beer as far as a little trike, you know, 3-wheel bicycle that can take the keg. So it's like a few blocks is all they're interesting to do. Like, kind of that, I kind of equate it to like the monk style, like where it's like, hey, this is how much beer we want to make. This is the sustainable model, and we're done. Going back to sustainability, as opposed to this idea of like, you have to grow forever or you're going to die. Like, well, that's not sustainable, right? Like,
So. Yeah.
And if everything has already been done and there's no room for growth, there wouldn't be 1,000 new breweries opening up every year.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of markets. There are some market. Everybody's scared of the S word, the saturation word, but some markets are quickly approaching that or far over it, and there's a lot of room for growth in others. So there's room for more beer.
Is coffee saturated? Like, you know what I mean? So how many Starbucks and local, you know, coffee shops do you have? Like, how do you not have an equivalent number of breweries in my mind?
Yeah,
right.
Because if it's at this neighborhood community level scenario, right? Like the really old English style pub, right? It's like, this is just a neighborhood gather. Like, you can have as many of those as you have neighborhoods.
Yeah, and that's really how beer works. It's the European model, the neighborhood brewery, the town brewery. And so I really like that, like seeing that happen over the time is like, as neighborhoods get smaller and smaller, I guess, your neighborhood brewery, there's like battles over it, kind of like, where does my neighborhood end?
But, you know, convenience plays a big role in it. So, you know, you go somewhere that's convenient. And
it's like 8 blocks versus 3 blocks. That's a big difference. That's a 60% difference.
Well, you know, anytime a new brewery opens up, we're not suddenly creating a new population of consumers that are over 21 that now go to that brewery. So we're all generally fighting for the same customers. But, you know, a new brewery opens up down the street, and maybe there's that couple or family that wouldn't normally go to a brewery. Now they do because it's a nice place to go. They like hanging out, and their other neighbors go there. So I think there's room for it.
There's always
still.
room. That's the crazy part. When you reach the saturation point with beer, for whatever, and coffee also, like you said, there's really not. Like, being closer is better. And like, if you're 2 blocks down, like, hey, I've had what I want here. I'm still thirsty, but I've had the things that I've had. I'll go 2 more blocks for another thing.
There's a lot to try.
We've got a brand new beer across the palate. What am I dealing with
Both
here?
of you. That's called our low flow Pilsner. It's a way that the river is described at the end of the river season. It's running in low flow. Not much water moving downstream.
Okay.
So a session Pilsner, we use the alpha glucosidase enzyme, the enzyme that Brut IPA brewers use
Okay.
to make their Brut IPA. So traditional Pilsner, not locally grown and malted grains, Brut enzyme in fermentation. So really dry finish, beer flavored beer, which is my favorite.
So a session Pilsner. Is
Session
Pilsner known to be a particularly robust ABV?
No, not necessarily, but when I have to, so I make that beer for me and our staff members
Okay.
for the most part.
The brewer's beer.
Yeah, mostly for me because, when I'm walking out of here on a Friday or a Saturday night, there's 50 people that I have to talk to, and I'd like to sit down and have a beer with them. I have to draw out boundaries somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to find that, but I make a really low ABV beer that I can have 10 of
Yeah.
and be okay.
Which is what a lot of brewers are looking for, right? Like,
I think so.
The head brewer of our program, who's sponsored by New Belgium, like they pay half a salary, we pay half. He's fantastic, super smart guy. But we both love English style beers. One, they're good, but also generally very low ABV. We have a hard time getting the students fired up about it. And when
Right.
I mentioned the production brewery we have in our student center, they're like, yeah, we don't want any of this 3.8 business. What are you talking about? Like, the students will never buy that. Like, we're like, it's delicious.
I want more of those.
Oh my god, one of my favorite beers. Evil Twin has a beach beer, bikini beer.
Yeah.
Have you had bikini?
No.
It's like 2.3%. Are you kidding
Love it.
me?
It's my favorite.
Yes, it's $12 for a 6-pack, but also
That's silly.
it's super delicious, and you can have them at the beach all day.
There are a few of these. So the low flow pills.
What's your ABV on this?
3.5.
3.5.
Yep.
I thought it was going to be like 4.2. That's killer.
3.5.
I'm going to drink this all the time.
That's what I do.
Right.
The English mild.
Oh yeah.
In the 4s. And then there's another style of beer that you don't see very often called a Kentucky Common
Yeah.
that the distillers used to make when they were done with their distillation mash.
We've got our California Common steam beer.
Right. A little bit different.
Little different,
than
yes.
that, but
Yeah, there's a bit more richness to the Kentucky Common.
well, more roasted malts. Sometimes there's rye in it, so it's really dark. There's body to it, but the Kentucky Common that I make is 2.5% ABV, and I love it. But it's a hard sell. Like
Yeah, people are spending $6. They want to get drunk.
well, we don't charge that much for that
Right.
beer, but it's
You got to value yourself, Charlie. Your labor's worth something.
Yeah,
No, but
You
like
ha-
table
you
beer, like in
have
Europe,
value.
right? The European kids, like they.
Yeah.
I mean, let's.
I love a table beer.
Yeah.
I think that's probably my problem. Is I'm like so on board for these low ABV things
Yeah.
that just aren't practicable in like the craft beer world.
well, I have to make a strawberry cheesecake smoothie sour
Yep.
and a session pilsner. But
Yeah.
you know what? There's a beer for everyone. It turns out.
Truly.
And
That's
I'm healthy because I have the low alcohol beer, right? Well, no, you had 10 of them, but it's healthy, right? Like,
right. It's like the calorie difference is like 60, so I'm killing it.
I don't know. Those smoothie sours, that's a day's worth of calories. And
Yeah,
in one
I
serve.
can't. Man,
Worth it.
what has beer
it?
become?
I don't know.
Beer is experimental, and it always has been.
Yeah,
Flavors and processes and everything. So
it's exciting. It's an exciting thing,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be boring. And people that want to drink the same thing over and over again are fine to do
They're
that.
okay.
You're
Yeah.
totally within your realm, but just know beer's supposed to be exciting and like
yeah,
fun.
beer's fun.
There is value. So, like visiting Germany, right? Going to Munich or something and just drinking a whole lot of Helles. And it's like, you're
yeah.
there for a little while and you're like, this is all there is. Like, this is going to be awful. And then you're like, you start finding those nuances and it's like so amazing and delicious,
Yeah.
right? And so you really enjoy that. But then you come back and you're like, oh, yeah, like the grenade beers, right? Just everything, everywhere coming at you. Like,
Yep.
it's all pretty awesome.
I like being a pedant, but styles are great for what they're for. It's a good baseline. It's a good reference. It's a good way to describe a beer to somebody that maybe doesn't have much experience. Like it's kind of like this thing that maybe you've tried before.
Yes, and that's I think the key to getting people into beer is finding what their flavors are, and as beer grows, there's more and more flavor profiles to match.
And
Or you just call everything an IPA.
well, sure, yeah. Or make it not taste like beer at all and add
You can't tell
strawberry cheesecake to
You
it.
can't tell people it's an IPA. That's scientifically proven. You should know this. There's hazies and there's beer. Did you know that's real?
We talked about the scientific method, and I don't think this qualifies.
This is.
I don't think it passes the test.
So somebody told
Test
me
this
it.
and repeat it.
Somebody told me there's hazy and there's beer. I was like, that's not real. And then
Charlie Bamforth might agree.
I was out on the streets. Working the corners. And so it became this idea that hazies are IPAs and IPAs are beer. That's what happened in the last 6 years. Is when you say IPA, you mean a hazy colloquially. It's fucking weird. So I was like, that's not real. And I was like just hanging out near a beer bar, and I hear 4 or 5 different people go, hey, do you want to go to this bar and get an IPA or a beer or something? They're separate entities. A hazy IPA is not considered like a regular beer.
But you also have your red IPA, your black IPA.
But they mean a hazy.
Your white
They mean
IPA.
let's go grab a hazy.
Well, not if you say a black IPA.
I followed him, and I was like, what are you ordering? And I was like, they're all ordering hazies. They're avoiding the West Coast. They're avoiding the... But, yeah, it's just a really weird thing.
I mean, Trent...
Get some beer that tastes like juice. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm also in the business of making money, so I make beers
You gotta do it.
that also sell.
Do you have seltzer on tap?
Not yet. It's in the fermenter.
Oh, I got here too soon. I'll be back. We'll
this
just,
is a beer podcast, right?
it's a beer podcast, but we've...
How's your tax on that seltzer? Yeah.
Yeah. What's so are you calling it chasing trends, or are you going to be a little less obvious? But
Non-traditional malt.
There's a market, and like as much as you're a brewer and like an artist and like you're pursuing your passions, you're in a space that isn't free.
No, it's true. And, I'm a brewer. I like brewing beer, and I like my beer to taste like beer. So, I've had to sacrifice some of my principles. Every day it feels like. But, the necessity drives innovation, and we have to diversify to constantly attract new customers all the time, broaden our customer base, get new people in here.
Get them in the door.
Exactly.
Once they're in the door, you can do what you want with them. That's the secret. If you have it's like, hey, you like the seltzer, you got a raspberry? Hey, it turns out we have a framboise. Boom. Connection. Made. Done.
Exactly.
So is the next level going to be like a clear, right, like Zima seltzer style thing, but that tastes like beer? Like your clear IPA. Has anybody made a clear IPA yet?
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
Hop
we
hop
did it.
extract in a seltzer.
Yeah.
And then they're going to add some malt extract to it. It's going to be a slightly malty seltzer.
Oh, boy.
It's the circle of life.
Yeah.
We're going to go all the way back around.
You're just going to slowly move it back towards beer. Like, let's just move the goalpost a little bit more. It's like, before it was at the back of the end zone. We're going to move it back toward the front of the end zone where people can get concussions really easy. And then we'll eventually get there.
Now I'm intrigued. Maybe I'm on the seltzer train now, where I see it could go.
If you're not on the seltzer train, get on it. Like, look, if I'm having...
I'm so glad you're not, and that's why I invited you.
You fight it as much as you can, but like, look, if you're having friends over, like a year ago, if you were having friends over and you're just hanging out for hours and you just want something that's kind of watery but not water,
Low flow session Pilsner.
look, okay,
There's no
you can sell
need
me
for
on that all day, every day. I'm like, give me that Kentucky Common. Is that available? Can I have that?
Not currently.
God damn
It's
it.
tough to sell that beer.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what it is.
Right.
I mean, this is
Not so
confessional, right?
common.
This is a good spot for a confession. I feel like last year I did get on the 0-0 train for a little while.
Oh,
from
yeah.
a program
The
thing I
NA.
was doing, and playing around with the NAs. Like that was
It's
it was
fun.
an enjoyable path actually to go down and check out what's out there. Not a lot in the craft beer
segment.
flavor, segment.
I was just at Bootstrap. They have some NAs.
They do.
Yeah. The IPA, not terrible.
which is nice when you're in that NA mode. It's nice. I mean, there
Or
are
you've
some.
had 8 beers already, and you're like, I got to calm it down, but I've also got to meet people for
That's what I
beers.
took away from it. Like, hey, you know what? That's actually a reasonable, because I want to keep drinking, but, I want to be productive tomorrow.
Yeah, my your Kentucky Common, that was my, end of the night. Like, hey, I've got to get out of here, but also I need to kill some time because I've been drinking these 8% IPAs and stouts. But who would drink water at a brewery? That's insane. So let's just drink these lighter ones.
I mean, it's 90% water, 95 maybe.
Yeah.
So, seltzer water is big right now, right? And I don't think, so the seltzer, the alcoholic seltzer thing, love it, leave it, take it, whatever. But seltzer water, perfectly nice, refreshing. So now having, basically beer seltzer, seltzer water that's beer flavored, everything's Michigan, yes, I'm in. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a weirdo.
New product today.
All you got to do is just keep moving it over till it's beer again, and then nobody's. It's just like you can't sell somebody an ESB, but you can sell them an English Pale Ale because they've
sure.
seen the basics of an IPA.
You can't put bitter in the name, of
Which is so
anything.
stupid.
Yeah.
So sad.
And somehow you find the workaround.
Maybe here, like we said earlier, our customer base is educated enough that they know what an ESB is,
Right.
probably.
Yeah.
But in less developed beer areas, bitter in the name of a beer, it's just not going to go.
Despite the fact that they're like, I'll drink this 10% IPA, no problem. But you put the word bitter in it, they're like, oh, never mind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we do forget. I mean, we're like in Fort Collins. We're in so many bubbles by the time especially in beer. But I have students graduating and going back and like to Alabama or something. I was listening to a student the other night talk to some of my current students, and they still have people coming in, asking for Bud Light. They're the one brewery in a fairly good-sized town, in the South that I think they legalized home brewing maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So like they're a good couple decades behind. So they're like Golden Ale is their number one seller. So it's like you forget that there still are segments that are like you say
have no
bitter
idea.
or even IPA is like whoa aggressive here. Come on, let's go aggro.
Yeah.
Well, craft breweries have 13 or 14% of the market, which is tiny.
Yeah, when you think about it, it's like
So tiny.
they celebrate it, they champion it like it's this big thing, but it's like it's still 1 in 7. That's not a very great percentage.
But now you start getting into what is craft now, because then you start getting into, and this is the whole, So,
but if you exclude the ones that aren't craft, how much does it change the percentage really?
whose definition of craft? Well, quite a bit.
Yeah, that's true. If
you lose to Belgium and England,
and
Boston
Lagunitas, or that's true. That makes a big change. Okay, fine. All right, I tried to pick a fight and I was wrong, and I'll admit it. I'll be the bigger man.
But let's go back 20 years ago, right? What was the goal when we were like, as home brewers and people, super psyched about craft, was to have better beer and more options. Not even, I can't say better, because if you're going to say that Bud Light or Budweiser or any of those are bad beers, like you're honestly not enough of a beer geek. You don't actually know enough about beer.
Right.
If you're saying that that's like not good beer. But more options and more flavorful options. And so like we're there, regardless of who's making it and how you classify it. Like it's a pretty nice time to be alive for beer.
That's true.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of craft beer geeks throw the big brewers onto the bus all the time, AB Coors and all of that. But the fact that they can brew the exact same beer in 13 or more different breweries with different water profiles across the U.S. and it tastes the same any place you buy it, that's amazing. It's incredible that they can do that. And craft brewers have a lot to learn from them, and they're willing to teach us.
Right.
So we should play nice.
And you should try Bud Light out of one of their fermenters when it's 7.5%.
So delicious.
Right.
It's really nice.
That's real beer.
Yeah. Damn it! I had a train of thought, and it went. Oh yes. Okay. So you're obviously
Welcome back.
Both into beer for some reason, and for me, my first beer love, I was 8 years old. It was Rainier beer, because my best friend's dad was a brewer at Rainier Beer. He had the Rainier. We go to his house. We'd
Isn't
have
it Renoir?
Rainier. Anyway, so he was a brewer there, and we'd go.
When it was still in Washington, or
it was still in Washington. It was in Seattle. I drove by that brewery every day to go into school, so it was constantly in my life. Rainier beer, Rainier beer. My best friend's dad works there. He's got tattoos. He has a house and a pool and all the coolest stuff. Oh man, I can't wait till I'm 21 and I'm drinking a Rainier beer. It was like my goal in life. And then like when I was 21, I was like, I don't know. I don't understand alcohol. I get into things without having to have the chemical imbalances. I'm just like
straight edge.
I'm super on board. Yeah, I had a roommate who got a straight edge tattoo at 19. I'm like, dude, you can't even do it yet. You can't have this tattoo. Just being like, I don't drink. You're 19. You're not legally allowed to have that tattoo at 23. Then he started doing heroin. I'm like, see, I fucking told you. So like,
Circle of life.
Wait till.
Easy tattoo to update, probably.
Yeah, that's true. Which he did cover up with a few things, but we don't talk anyway.
Track marks.
But yeah, track marks really. Well, boy,
Sorry,
we did the thing. But and then I think it was like 25, and I was like, because I'd moved, and Rainier was not readily accessible to me anymore, and I went into like Portland, and I was like, oh, there's Rainier beer. I'm gonna grab a Rainier beer. I was so excited to have a Rainier beer, and it was terrible. And I've tried to go back. I'm like, hey, I'm a refined guy who understands that like the big brewers do different things, but it's still like the quality of brewing. And Rainier, I just can't get on board with at all.
It might just be that beer. It's not a big versus small. You may just not like that beer.
Give me a Miller Lite anytime. I'm on board.
Okay,
give me a Coors Light and I'm going to vomit immediately. And that's just tied to like binge drinking. That's a mental impasse I can't cross.
Renoir that you're talking about.
Yes.
In your circle on the West Coast, Coors Light, that was us here.
Okay.
It was right down the road. We're always jonesing for Coors Light. And on a hot day, I have no problem with it. Ice cold Coors Light. And you know it's ice cold because the can is blue.
The mountains are blue.
It tells you.
Yeah.
You'll know. It's
Cold-
like, what?
cold brewed.
These are gray.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to come near this.
I was too pretentious for that. It was a Bud Heavy or it was Coors Banquet. Like this light stuff.
Oh, yeah. Give me a Coors
Extra
Banquet.
filters, please. Come on. What are you, wuss? Like, come on.
Bush latte.
Yeah. Oh, man. A Coors Banquet. That's the business.
It is.
Actually, even Bud Heavies take me back, and it's like
I've never even heard of it or had it.
A Bud Heavy?
Yeah.
It's just Budweiser. As opposed to a Bud Light,
Okay.
a Bud Heavy.
Okay. See, this is
Well,
I'm learning.
the red label.
There was another Bud Platinum.
Oh, yeah.
Oh well, that was a whole nother thing.
That was a whole
And
thing.
Bud
That was a
Ice-
whole push.
So Bud Ice I might be there where you are with Rainier. We're like, yeah, let's just not do that.
Don't do like look, if it's not an ice buck, I don't want anything to do with your ice beers. Like,
I mean, there's a beer for all times, a beer for all people.
yep.
I don't like poo-pooing on any brewer or brewery or beer, large or small.
Yeah.
I mean, there are beers that taste like poop, and people like them,
That's true.
And that's their right as a human.
and that's great.
And if they can sell it, more power to them.
great job.
I close my eyes and I see the inside of the
Just finish that
the
sentence.
outhouse. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the great joys of being a beer nerd is like you could find people and like, what do you drink? I got a big Bud Light fan at home that we hang out with all the time, and I got her to drink. She's drinking double IPAs. There's a double IPA she can't get enough of, because I was like, "What do you like about your Bud Light?"
That's a
And
jump.
you just keep You just keep working your way through it, and like, so it's a Dust Bowl Therapist. I don't know if you guys know Dust Bowl at all. It's not a national brand. It's a regional. It's a very big regional in California. But the Therapist is like a delicious double IPA. It's great. Probably one of the best readily available ones. Anyway, the point is you just work your way in.
Sure.
You get there. There's a beer for everybody, and there's a way to jump to the next thing. Like
People generally like IPAs, but they don't like bitterness.
Right.
And
It's,
most IPAs outside of the West Coast, like traditional style West Coast IPA, people are getting away from that really bitter flavor.
They really
profile.
are.
And it makes IPAs in particular more approachable to a
Yes.
wider audience. So people say they don't like IPAs, they just don't like bitterness.
yes.
And that's not always the case anymore.
Yeah. But that one is an
IPA
old
versus
school.
hazy. Didn't he say that earlier? I
Yeah,
guess
That's true. Yeah, it's a totally different
see,
style.
I told you. Look, I know what I'm talking about. I've done the research. I went on the streets and I found out that the thing that sounded absurd to me was actually true. Like, this is, and I traveled. I went to Portland and the same thing happened. Do you want to get an IPA or a beer or something? And they'd always go get it a hazy, and it wouldn't be a Racer 5, which is my favorite IPA. Just so, have you had one?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say Odell IPA is
Yeah.
my longest term. Like that is an IPA.
It's kind of the local standard.
Yeah. Oh man.
I married my wife because that was her favorite beer, and this was at a time when women didn't do IPAs like that
Yeah.
whole thing. She loved Odell IPA, and I was like, we're done.
Done.
We're done
That's
here.
it. Here's the way.
My girlfriend loves beer. It's great. She's bitter blind, but still loves IPAs. But that's the best part, because like a lot of people say that an IPA is a cheater beer. You can bury your bad processes through hops.
Hide some off
Totally.
flavors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally
And
true.
so she's like, nah, IPA is not the business, and here's why. I'm like, oh my God, I think I might be in love. Like, this is a real thing. It's so beautiful.
So we get a diversity of customers that walk into here, and a lot of wine drinkers, and the acidity from some red wines can match sour beers pretty
Yep.
closely.
Very easily.
So we can convert a lot of wine-only drinkers into sour beer drinkers because they like that pungency and strength of flavor and acidity that they find in sour beers. It doesn't work for everyone, but
it's pretty successful. Just like with stouts, do you like coffee? Do you like chocolate? Here's a stout, and you find your way through it.
Yeah.
I think IPAs are always like the end point. There's very rarely somebody's like, IPA is where I start. That's not a story you hear a lot.
I mean, I kind of did that.
You fucking monster.
I know.
Quite a while ago. I mean, home brewers, that was like the thing. That was
exactly.
how you measured.
That's why I did it. Yep.
Yeah, well, there's like the bragging rights to the fact that you can handle this level of bitterness.
Yeah.
There's these hops that just taste like raw, pure onion, but you're going to throw a lot in and like bump your alpha acids up and like, yeah.
So it was, 90 Shilling from Odell was like my introduction.
I love it.
This is what craft beer tastes like. And then Punjabi from Coopersmiths was the IPA introduction.
The Hanjabi's a little better. But.
Yeah, I think so too. And they won a medal for that beer, multiple medals for that beer. So it was like an IPA craze for a while. And that was before even hazies even started or became the new IPA or whatever style you want to call it. But there's so much diversity outside of that. And even within IPAs. Like IPAs, it's hard to call everything an IPA.
Yeah,
because
they try.
Yeah.
There's a real push to get
it's just
all
a marketing term. It
juicy,
almost means
hazy,
nothing.
session. Just everything. It's madness. Because IPAs are where people go to. It's their first call now.
Mm-hmm.
After years,
come try our new Kentucky Common IPA. You're gonna love it.
If you did that, if you called it a Kippa, they'd be like, oh, "We're on board."
Yeah.
It's our low ABV, low cal IPA. Like, what?
Quadruple dry hops.
Don't mind if I do. It's like, this is a bit maltier. Like, how do you think the calories so low? And then they're like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll move on.
Semantics.
Yeah.
What does IPA even mean anymore?
No,
Really,
it doesn't
honestly?
mean anything.
Whatever you want it to be.
I'm sorry. A hazy IPA, I'm like, where's the bitterness? It's like, you can tell me it's 90 IBUs all you want to. It doesn't taste like it because IBUs are imaginary.
That's true.
First of all, the number doesn't mean anything, but like, I'm a big throat rip guy. I want to be able to like drink 3 and be like, oh, I won't talk tomorrow. That's what I want.
Well, there is the new thing, the hot burn that's coming after.
Yeah.
Which
I don't want the alcohol burn.
No. Hot
not.
burn is a whole nother thing.
And hazies, yeah.
I actually want those to go. I want that to go away.
I do too.
Yes, also me.
It's just rushed. It's just rushed beer.
Yeah.
And for me, it's only at the end.
Yeah.
It's the last whatever sip or two. Whether you drink it out of the can, whatever you decant it, like. Physically, how is this possible? I don't understand.
That every time it's the last 2 ounces that just get you?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you leave that beer in your fridge for a day and drink it the next day, and suddenly there's no more
refresher.
hopper.
Hop refresher.
Just give it a little bit more time.
That it's probably a marketing scheme to remind you to get another one.
Look, okay.
You need to wash that down. Like, go get another one.
Jeff, you're the scientist in the college. You got to figure out why that's happening.
I have had students working on it, actually. Yes.
Okay, great.
ongoing.
Let's get that paper out
Apparently,
there.
it's not polyphenols. That's the scientific thing I can give you.
What are your theories? What are you working on hop burn?
Well, I do think, Charles. I mean, it's beer that's rushed. I actually don't know what it is
because there
but
are
it's when
beers that
it's
don't
young.
have it at all. Oh yeah,
Sure.
a green beer.
Yep.
Oof.
Heavy dry hop. Put
You know
into
what?
package too soon. Consumed. It's like a day or two too early.
Yeah, 3 days max.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? I think that's the right path. I think we nailed it. Stop. Hold the presses. We've nailed it. Because that's what I've noticed also. Because you drink a beer 2 days later, it doesn't have that problem.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad we solved this problem. We solved the riddle.
Well, here at this table for sure. But
Yeah.
you'll buy them tomorrow.
So I got a question that I got to ask you.
Okay.
Gilded Goat. Where's the name come from? Why is it called the Gilded Goat?
Because we like alliteration and imagery. We spent a long time on our brand and the logo and what it was going to look like and feel like in here. So that initially, but we got our inspiration from a family. We all packed into a motorhome and toured bars, breweries, pubs all over Europe and UK, and liked the warm, welcoming pub atmosphere that we saw. Owners behind the bar, touching tables. It was just a different vibe from a lot of other places that we saw in the U.S.
Yes.
So we wanted to bring that back with us. The goat is a good representation of the Colorado lifestyle. It's bold, adventurous, living on the edge, so to speak. We have our front half of a goat right on the edge in our
Did you
tap
hunt
room.
that?
I did not, but apparently that's a trophy mountain goat.
I like it.
So, yeah, so kind of that animal theme made it relatable. Had some imagery to it. The gilded, it's not gelded. We've had that question a lot, and that's a ballless goat, very different than what we're doing here. So it's gilded with an I, and that's golden. And so that's the warm wood that we have all over, kind of just that golden shine on things. The gold medal from GABF helped all of that too.
Where did you get that from?
Our Bock, malty German lager.
Yeah,
so.
which to me is a goat.
Exactly. Look, Bock beer with the goat.
Yeah.
Bock beer with a goat.
Oh, you mean you didn't bring goats to beer? Oh man.
Yeah.
No.
Got to catch up.
It's been around for a long time.
If you give me a Bock, I'm going to immediately
Coors.
picture a goat.
There's some Coors Steins over there for the Bock that they used to make in the 70s.
Is it a goat?
With a goat on
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so it's been around for a
So
long
maybe
time.
I'm like, oh yeah, apparently there's a whole process of making sure people associated Bocks with goats. So
Yeah.
that's...
Bock in German is goat. So
Oh, is it?
yeah.
Well, there you go.
No, it works out. It was a lot of validation. Like it lined up pretty well.
Have you had any Ader beers? Have you guys done a Doppelbock yet?
We haven't made a
Oh, yeah, an
Doppelbock,
Ator.
but that's what you put at the end of the
Yeah.
naming of a Doppelbock. No.
We made one and we called it Vaccinator. And, there was some pushback, but we got it to work.
No, you nailed it.
It's so timely.
Well, that's what we felt
Look,
like.
when you nail a name, there's going to be some pushback. People are like, they're jealous. It's just jealousy.
Yeah.
That's a great name.
I mean, it's not like people on campus are afraid of country. Oh, wait, what am I saying? Yes. No.
Yeah. So that answers my question. Why not go with the Gilded Goose? You know, Golden Goose, the thing that's going to make you money
Trademark
forever.
infringement.
Oh, is there a Gilded Goose? that I'm
You know,
unaware
that's
of?
kind of a thing in the craft brew. I don't know if you've talked about this yet on your podcast, trademark infringement, but
I mean, I've heard, but I did not know there's a Gilded Goose out there.
well, it wasn't a golden goose from Willy Wonka. Didn't he have golden egg-laying geese?
Well, I think that's a thing that's throughout history.
Well,
so
yeah,
I'm
the
wondering
golden
if it's,
goose. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it's like, well, if you do Gilded Goose, is that infringing because you're changing Golden Goose to something else?
I mean, the geese in Fort Collins are kind of a pest. They just shit all over the sidewalks and
Yep.
They
cross,
don't leave
cross the
ever.
street.
They never do. I have them where I work. There's a geese, and it's just you can't use the sidewalks.
No.
They're unusable.
The Rocky Mountain goat is a tad more majestic.
It's true.
Than a goose.
Yeah.
So Charlie's pretentious, really.
Certainly, yeah. I'll admit to that.
There we go. We got
Now we're saying some animals are better than others. I mean, what's next?
Yes,
goats
everyone
are
knows
better
that.
than geese. I don't think we're going to get a lot of pushback on that. I'll find out. If I get some pushback, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Goats are better than geese. I think we all can
Unanimous.
agree with that.
Yeah,
I'd rather eat a goat than a goose.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what are they doing? Fucking up airplanes? I don't know why I'm swearing so much. I'm sorry.
Well,
Actually, I have a fun story. I took a CSU class during grad school, and I got to go to DIA and shoot a shotgun on DIA property.
Wow.
It was part of the pest management or whatever, so they will do that to get ready. It felt so wrong and so right at the same time. Like, it was wild. Anyway,
bring a firearm to a federal.
yes,
Airport.
it was amazing.
Yeah. All right. I think we spent enough time here. Do you think that's the truth?
Yes,
Yes. Okay, great.
based on that.
Perfect. All right. So before we go, obviously, people want to know what they can do at Gilded Goat. How can they find out more about you? Where can they learn what you got going on?
The World Wide Web. We have a website. Social media, of course. Gilded Goat Brew, Gilded Goat Brewing, a bunch of similar handles.
I feel like I did this at the last one. I'm like, I asked Chris at Troubadour, hey, where can you find Troubadour Maltings? And he had the answer. But my favorite part is that the brewers never know. They're like, brewery, brewing, brew co. And it's like my favorite thing is just watching them struggle to be like, what is our social media handle?
Where are we?
Fortunately, I have
It's like, well, on Twitter we're this, and then we're on Instagram on this,
Yeah.
and then it's Facebook at this. And I have the same problem. You know, I'm Barley and Me Pod across everything, but then on my email it's Barley and Me Podcast. Then a listener got me Barley and Me Pod at Gmail, just like for consistency's sake.
Yeah. It's some variation of Gilded Goat Brew, Brewing, Brew Co. across all the social media.
So
that
whether
know.
you Google or DuckDuckGo, you mean you might be able to find
It
you?
should be the same.
Yes.
It should be, yeah. And we've paid enough in SEO optimization that we should be your first result now,
Yeah.
hopefully, at this point.
What was first before, out of curiosity?
Nothing, I don't think, but we were just making sure that we're in that
Gotcha.
top three, at least, if you're going to search for something.
Yeah. I mean, for a long time, barley to me was number one. You couldn't, like, this name, there's nothing like it. And now I'm like 6th or 7th. I'm like, shit. And I haven't done nothing to change it. And it's probably slipped. I don't care.
There's going to be some new movie about a golden retriever named Barley. And
Yeah.
There will be no confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. My brother-in-law's dog's name was Barley. So and he got me into beer. So it made sense when I came up with the name. Like, this is like honoring my brother-in-law who got me into beer. And it's a good name to go along with the movie. I came up with spoiler alert, the beer dies at the end. Like everything, it all came together. And I don't say it on the episodes very often because, like, when you tell a stranger that's the tagline, some people have a very bad reaction to it because it's still associated with the movie. That kind of makes the name make sense. They're like, no, I'm like, this is fun and cute and lighthearted.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just get like a trigger warning T-shirt.
Yeah.
And just, like, you
Carry it
didn't read.
around.
I mean, it does say, it says spoiler alert, so you got the warning right into it.
Sounds fair. Quick question: Does Google still have the "I'm feeling lucky" option? Do you remember that?
I do remember that,
Yeah.
and I don't
know what it did.
I always knew
Took you to the first hit, I think.
Yeah.
That's dumb.
Well, now the first hit is an ad. So
Yes.
it's tricky.
You got to go down
Tricky to
4
know.
to 5 results to get out of those ads.
Yeah.
Google's not as fun as it used to be. So yeah, that's or Alphabet or whatever it is.
Yeah. Awful. As soon as Mark Cuban got out, we were all doomed, I guess. All right, I'm not going to go into a basketball tangent again. That's why I was late to this one.
You did that already.
It's why I was late.
We don't know
So I
anything about
can't-
basketball, so
Great.
we can't help
Yeah.
you.
Mark Cuban is known for the Shark Tank. There we go.
That part, yeah.
That's what he's known for, business acumen.
Doesn't he own a hockey team?
Yes, exactly. He owns a hockey team. I can't do this again. I made a mistake by asking you how to get to Gilded Goat online. First, Jeff Calloway, where can people find out more about the CSU fermentation program?
The Google machine is a good place to start.
Even though you'll get some ads up top.
They might be CSU ads.
They could be CSU
I mean,
ads.
honestly, getting more people into the college, I mean, it's not the worst thing that happens.
It is not the worst thing, but yeah. So if you're into making beer and getting into the scene here, it's CSU FST is pretty easy. FST is Fermentation Science and Technology. CSU could be Colorado State University or any number of things, but we do have an Instagram at CSU_fermentation. I am woefully underutilizing that
think
bit
that
of
makes
technology. I'm old, and getting the Instagram thing going is difficult for me, but we're working on it. We did just launch a new malt testing laboratory, so we have some media coming out. The new brewery's launching. There's all sorts of press, but the Google machine, people seem to find us.
Yeah. So, malt testing,
Yes.
what does that mean?
So, as a brewer, Charlie, do you or do you not like to know how your malt is going to perform?
Jeff, I do like to know how my malt is going to perform.
So there are these things called COAs, Certificate of Analyses, and somebody has to run tests on the malt to tell you, how much protein is in it, enzyme capacity, all this stuff, right? So how's it going to work? And there's a lot of craft malt out there now, and growing. And historically, everybody sent their malt to Hartwick College, and they're awesome. Aaron at Hartwick is rad, but we are in a situation where ourselves in the FST program, Brewing with Beer, are trying to brew, and we're teaching people how to brew with a COA, and we are brewing without a COA because it takes too long when you send it to Hartwick because there's just too much. So Montana State has started a malt testing lab, and we have as well, so that there's a few more options and quicker turnaround. So it's deep in the industry, right? We're here to support the industry. So your average lay consumer isn't going to care, but the brewers and the maltsters, it's valuable to them.
So I have a question. Since you're testing the malt and you've got all these figures, this is what this means. This is what I found. There's got to be you're a brewer. They've given you this information. There's got to be an interpreter somewhere along the way, right? Because you're going to tell them, this is the numbers, But there's got to be somebody who says, this is what this number means, right? Are you doing that? Are you expecting the brewers to do that? Is there an intermediary that kind of interprets that information?
Bridging that gap is what the program is intending to do. So when we talked about educating consumers before, I mean, now it is educating brewers
that are consuming malts.
Yes, 100%. So how to read a COA and effectively modify your recipes to get what you want and know how to read those. So absolutely, we're working on that, and it's a big push in the industry. And at the end of the day, it's for better beer for everyone. So that's what we're doing.
Perfect.
And training the students that come out of the program to analyze the COA and know what it means.
Yeah,
how to adapt
out of the gate. So there's no gap.
Yep.
It's like I was in this program, I learned that, and I'm brewing, and I already know. There's no barrier to entry.
Yep.
Which is wonderful. All right, we've spent too much time. I want to thank you guys so much for doing this.
Of course, Ben.
So before we go, you can find Barley Me across social media. Is at Barley Me Pod. Check out my Chugs for Charity. Donate to my Charity of the Week. It's a whole thing. You want to get involved. You want to get free beer. Do your own Chugs for Charity. Tag me. Use the hashtag #ChugsNumber4Charity. And you get access. You get entered to win a free beer from my beer cellar. Chug a Black is beautiful. You get 2 entries, and you get access to my fresh beers. There's pictures online showing what I got. I've got a list. It's a whole thing. It's not working out. I've given away 3 beers in a year because I only get it's like a push, and there's 3 entries in 1 month, and then there's nothing for months. It's still happening. It's still raising money.
Keep pushing.
I stopped telling you to send me money to forward on, so I don't know what the numbers are anymore. But before I did that, we were making $1,000 a month towards charity. So I imagine this continued. Hopefully the views are the same. So hopefully people are. I got a basketball and beer podcast. Please drink responsibly. Check that out. Bengineering. That's a copyrighted Bengineering,
like
a
that.
podcast. If you're tired of hearing my voice, I understand, but I am Bengineering, a podcast featuring 2 comedians, Becky Lynn and Tavi, answering your questions about mental health. It's called It's Crazier in My Business. Check that out. And I'm also working on a new project that's completely different from all this stuff. There's no beer whatsoever. It's a very big departure for me. That's secret, but I'm still going to promote it as if it's... I hate promoting.
You could probably do that once and just record it.
No, I think about it, but I'm like, I gotta go find it and cut it in.
Feels
there.
inauthentic.
It'll sound different. It'll be a different sound level, and it's just a whole thing. And honestly, people stopped listening at least 10 minutes ago, so it's whatever.
There's some bitter enders, I guarantee it.
Yeah. Oh, I guarantee it. But they want to hear how I just give up. I think that's part of the charm. It's just Ben giving up on why are we doing this? A lot of professionals do it in the beginning. Make sure people get those.
We're optimistic here in Colorado, so we're not letting you give up.
Clicks early on, and I'm just I'm not going to do it because I want to get into the business. We got to get in. I don't want to waste your time with a 15-minute intro. I want to waste your time with a 5-minute outro. Everybody knows it. So Charlie Hoxmeier of Gilded Goat, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben. Happy to be here.
Jeff Calloway's Colorado State Fermentation Science and Technology, thank you so much.
Cheers, Ben. Appreciate it.
This has been episode number insert. Thanks so much for listening. Get home safe.